Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my very first PowerPoint presentation. So please forgive my lack of professionalism here as far as being a TV star, but I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today, and we are glad that you all are joining us. Hopefully we can learn some stuff together. We're going to talk about ants today, and I will have questions at the end. So please bear with me as I come, do my best. Okay. First of all, let's see. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. My name is Jeff Wilkinson. I'm with Heritage Professional Products. I'm an associate certified entomologist. That doesn't, I'm not, if you need a real insect expert, you need to contact your university. I've got a degree in horticulture. I've been involved with the landscaping industry, either full or part-time, for over 40 years, if you count my mowing businesses in high school and so forth. But I've been used to be a teacher, taught mathematics and science at elementary, high school, and middle school levels. Been selling pest control chemicals going on 14, 15 years now with Heritage. And like I say, I'm going to share some of my knowledge with all of you. If it helps, it's cool, and we'll share with each other. If you need a real entomologist, a real expert on insects, your university is probably the better place to start than me, but I'll be glad to help you if I can. Okay. But like I said, I'm going to share what I've learned, and we'll go from there. Okay. So if you have any questions, there's my number. I'll put that up at the end of the presentation. Okay. Ants. Ants are one of the most fascinating and successful insects. Year after year, they are one of the main pests for pest control operators, and they're also main pests for landscaping and for guys too. They are one of the top revenue generators for pest control operators year in and year out. They are one of the first insects to get started in the spring, and they stay busy all year until the frost time. They're found on every continent except Antarctica. They're found in the Arctic tundra. They're found in deserts, all environments. The majority of species are found in the tropics. More than 12,000 species have been identified, and there's only about 25 or so that are pests in our home. Okay, so ants are way more mobile than they used to be. They get transported through global commerce primarily, and they are I've found them in a bag of mulch. You know, I've opened up a bag of mulch from Home Depot, and there's ants everywhere. Okay, so they get transported very readily, especially these days with global commerce. Anatomy of ants. If you'll notice, the it's just a typical insect, head, thorax, and abdomen. On ants, the abdomen is called the gaster. Okay, this entire region right here is called a gaster, and that's specific to ants. The gaster contains has the thin waist, when they call it petioles. These are called nodes. And the gaster is the big round abdominal part right here. Okay, but head, thorax, and abdomen, the antennas will be they're elbowed on ants. Okay, so we'll talk about how to ID them in just a minute. Okay, they are ants belong to the order Hymenoptera. Hymenoptera means membranous wings. These wings are basically see-through, kind of like a fly, you know, a fly's wings, but they are not related to flies. They're related actually to bees and wasps. And ants ants, bees, and wasps have constricted waists. Okay, they have small waists. So if you're looking at a bug, and you know, if it's got a small waist, it's either one of these three orders. And of course, there's millions of insects that are bees, wasps, and ants. It's a giant category of insects. However, we can narrow it down. It's a bee, wasp, or an ant, but just by the constricted waist. Okay. Winged ants. Winged ants are they are produced during reproductive cycles of a colony. They occur occasionally. We see them occasionally, sometimes parts of the year. These wings here, you can see the membranous texture to them right there. Okay, the reproductive ant looks a lot like a wasp. Okay, but we look for the nodes. Okay, well, what's a node? Well, nodes are these little bumps right here. Remember the narrow waist we talked about? They have a little bump right there. Some of them have one, some ants have one, some ants have two, but there's little bumps there, and they're called nodes. Okay, look for the nodes for ants. Ants have nodes. There's the node right there, that little bump. The head, thorax, and the gaster or the abdomen with the node. Okay. All right. Some ants have two nodes. 1, 2. So, quiz time. What's this? Got a constricted waist. Okay. Okay, constricted waist, it's a bee or a wasp. Bees, ants, wasp, what is it? It's a trick. It's a velvet ant. It's called a velvet ant, but actually it's a wasp. Okay, this is actually a wasp. It's a wingless wasp. Look for the nodes to make sure it's an ant. This is just a trick, and you can't really see the nodes anyways. This is a wasp. It's a wingless wasp. It's called, but they call it a velvet ant. Confusing, huh? Always look for the nodes. Make sure it's an ant. Okay, ant or termite. Sometimes we run into this dilemma, especially in the springtime. I see these little bitty bugs flying around, and people just freak out and think they're termites. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. Ants, again, one of the characteristics of an ant is the elbowed antenna. Okay, the termites have straight antenna, and also the the termites have a beaded antenna. They look like little beads strung together on termites. So it's real easy. You can even tell with a hand lens if something, if a swarmer is a termite or really quickly by looking at the antennas. Okay. The beading is obvious. Okay. Also, ants have again the narrow waistline we talked about. They have the narrow waistline. Termites do not. Ants have two pairs of wings, and the front wings are longer than the rear. And termites, those two pair of wings, they're both the same length. Okay, family. This is where it gets kind of interesting. Ants are truly social insects. There are three main castes of ants. There's queen, there are males and workers. Okay, the soldiers that we hear about, they're modified workers. Okay, the queens are the main egg layers. The queens are the key to a colony. They are the main key in a colony, and they are some queens live about some species of ants, they'll live 200 or 300 days or so, 200 days, and another queen will take over. Some ant species, the queens can live years, and so it's kind of depends on the species of ant. The queens, they're mated. The males, they get together and mate, and the queen will store she'll be inseminated by a male. Okay, when they mate, that she stores that semen in her body for her whole lifetime. So they mate once and they're done. Okay, so all the eggs that she lays are genetically pretty much identical. Okay, so that's kind of important when we talk about resistance. Most insects, for cockroaches, for example, cockroaches they have a lot of variation. They get resistance to chemicals because they reproduce and have different genetic mixtures going on all the time. So some genetically, some cockroaches may be resistant to a certain, like a pyrethroid chemical, for example. Okay, with ants and termites, these social insects that are essentially identical genetically, all the participants in a colony, then resistance doesn't become so much of an issue. The same stuff that works on ants, 20 years ago, probably in most cases still works today. Okay, so they don't become resistant to chemicals as quickly as other insects do. The males, they are winged and they die almost immediately after mating. Their only purpose is to inseminate the queens. Okay, the workers, they're the wingless, infertile females of various sizes. They're all female. All the workers are females. They are some workers, they become soldiers, and some workers become sometimes they're kind of transformed into queens if the queen starts to die. Some of the workers will lay eggs and start they basically kind of become queens. It's really a strange dynamic that's happening in there, but the the females do all the work. They do all the work of the colony. Okay. When identifying ants, we want to collect the workers. Okay, the reproductive ants, sometimes the physiology changes a little bit, and they don't look like a typical of their species. Okay, so be sure to get workers and/or soldiers if you can. Also, notice if the workers are the same size, because sometimes that's if the workers are different sizes, that's indicative of different species of ants. Sometimes they have different size ants. Okay, so in the worker bunch. So all right, let's talk about nests. Ant nests. Ants nest in a variety of different spots. They'll nest in the trees or in the ground or under houses. We do need to talk about a couple of different types of nests. This one is a fire ant nest. Okay, you guys us folks in the South have these kind of nests. This is, once you see one of these things, you kind of can recognize them from your car. For some reason, they just look, all the particles seem to be the same uniform size. This is actually a nursery for the young. If you'll notice these, when you see these things out this year, notice there's no ants that are on top of this thing. They're not crawling around this mound. Okay, this is actually a nursery for the young. Okay, ants go through complete metamorphosis, meaning they have an egg, and then the egg hatches to a larvae, and then they pupate almost like a butterfly. Really, they make a pupal case, and then they come out as ants. So these big mounds here on a fire ant mound are actually the nurseries. They have the larva, they have the pupae, they have all the stuff for those young, and they get fed in there and all that stuff. So once you disturb this thing, they get really, really angry. Okay, so don't want to disturb it. If you can't, the access holes to this mound will be off out here in the grass somewhere. Okay, there'll be access. So please don't disturb these mounds. We want to bait these mounds or soak them with a labeled insecticide, because if you disturb them, they get it causes panic in the colony. Okay, if you just mow over the top of it, the ants get disturbed, and they get too mad to eat. Well, basically, they get so mad they can't stand it, and they won't eat. We want them to eat our bait. When we start baiting these things, we want them to eat that bait. So if you can not disturb them, that's ideal. Okay. These ants are, if you get a baby and a small child in these things, they're really they can be a medical emergency in some cases. Okay, so you need to get rid of these things off your properties. All right, let's talk about carpenter ants. Carpenter ants are another kind of ant nest we need to talk about, and carpenter ants aren't quite this sophisticated, but they do nest in wood. They prefer moist wood. They don't eat it, but they just nest in it. So if you see carpenter ants in a home, there's a water problem somewhere. Okay, if you see carpenter ants out there in a structure, especially inside towards the interior walls of the structure, you may need to look around for a water leak. Okay, if you find tunnels that are smooth, they'll kick sawdust out of there. And if that sawdust contains insect parts, that's a giveaway. You're going to have carpenter ants. Okay, if you see insect parts in that sawdust, it's almost a guarantee you have carpenter ants. But the biggest problem is the moist wood. So these are carpenter ants they'll range a long way. Ideally, we find the nest of them if we can. Okay, carpenter ants will eat. Like I said, they do not eat wood, but they do eat. They eat dead insects. They'll eat honeydew from plants. They eat a lot of different. They eat a lot of different types of material. So anyway, if you can find the nest, that's the ideal way to control these guys. Okay, so what do ants eat? Well, it depends on what the colony needs. They eat carbohydrates, sugars. They do that for just like we do for energy. They for foraging and defense and just kind of doing all the things they normally do. Most of the time, they're looking for carbohydrates. Okay, they also eat fats, lipids, and protein. Okay, so protein and sugars the big things. They'll eat fats occasionally, but the protein they're required when the queen needs a lot of protein to lay eggs, and they get that protein from other insects. Okay, they'll find dead insects. They're scavengers. They'll find those dead insects and feed on them. They'll eat your fried chicken at a picnic. All that stuff. They're looking for protein. Okay, sometimes they feed. They'll feed on both. So sometimes they'll feed on sugars and proteins, and but feeding is important. If you can figure out, most of these baits that we discuss will have both components in it in the bait. So that's really not a concern when we're baiting, but it's kind of interesting to know that they do require different things at different times. So in the summer and the fall, the worker population increases significantly. So the more energy is needed in the summer and the fall. Carbohydrates, they'll start eating the sugars when it gets a little warmer. Okay, right now in this early spring, we're focused on reproduction, and they're eating a lot of proteins. Okay. Foraging ants like to follow structural guidelines generally. Okay. The ants will go out and look for food. They just kind of wander. Well, what I mean, only go out. Structural guidelines are like the edge of a sidewalk, the edge in a crack. They'll follow. A lot of times they'll follow along a wall, along a crack in the sidewalk. They just kind of wander around looking for food. Once the food is found, they return to the nest with it, and they will release a pheromone that signals the way to the food source. And another ant will find that pheromone. Basically, they're telling the other ants, "Hey, food's that way. Go get it." So these other ants will follow this pheromone, and as they follow the trail, it gets stronger. Okay, as they go get the food, they'll release their pheromone, and this trail gets stronger and stronger and stronger as they go back and forth with the food. That's very important as we learn how to control these ants is they will gather, as you know, they drop something and it's not long before there's a bunch of ants feeding on this. So they can navigate using these pheromones. A quick way to determine the direction of a nest is watching where they're going with the food. You can follow a foraging ant and he'll take you right real close to the nest. Okay. So when you look at these jobs, be sure to kind of note the direction that these guys are going with the food. If you have a part of your if you have a bag of like Cheetos or something, you can crumble those up and drop them down, and they'll pick them up and they'll haul them off to the nest. And that's maybe a quick way to figure out, okay, I need to go look this way and see if I can find where these guys are coming from. When you look at these ant jobs, be sure to collect samples. The more ants, the better. Take some empty jars with you, and along with some alcohol, and not Jim Beam, not not any of those kind of things, but take some isopropyl alcohol, so you can ID these ants. You need to catch a few to ID them. Okay. Now we have to catch a few ants. So take a few empty jars with you. Empty jars, test tubes with a screw-on lid. They work really well. Cups, if you just don't have anything else, a coffee cup will work. You put something sweet in one of them, like syrup or sugar water, something like that, and put a protein in the other one. So peel off a piece of your sandwich or something, a piece of your ham sandwich, and stick it in there. And when you go to look at these jobs, you can tell, you can catch a few in a jar. Okay. So when you catch a few, you pour some alcohol in there, and that kills them, obviously. So they're going to have to give it all up for science. But then you take that, that mixture of ants and alcohol and pour it and filter them out on a coffee filter. Then you can get your microscope or hand lens out, and we'll try to ID them. Okay, you don't need a whole lot of magnification. Probably 10 to 30x will get you where we want to be on IDing these ants. But the microscopes are very affordable. And I think if we're going to be, if you want to be a pro about this, it's really a good idea to have a microscope. It's really a good idea to try our best to ID these ants, these insects, and because when you go to a client's house, and you say, well, you got ants. I've got ants. Okay, we're going to look at the ants. And, well, what kind of ants are they? Well, saying somebody's got piss ants is not a good idea. Okay, it's best to have a good. This is a pavement ant. This is a acrobat ant. Whatever. Get a good ID. At least do your best to ID the ant. It just makes you look more professional. And when we look professional, it's beneficial for your business. Okay. I heard, I think it was Bobby Corrigan. He's a rodent guy. He said, embrace the science. It's good for business. So once we act and look professional, it's going to benefit your business. Identifying ants. Okay, you got to do it. So we'll learn how to identify a few ants here. Hopefully we'll learn how to what to look for and that kind of thing. So hopefully nobody's drinking yet this morning. Maybe let's wait till later, okay? So let's see here. Okay, first question. Ant keys. Okay, what's an ant key? Well, an ant key is, it should be, they are kind of a flow chart of what you look for. These things are designed for, it's a flow chart. As you progress through here, it will ask you questions about, how to identify these different species of ants, and finally you'll get down to, what it is. Okay, some of these keys, some of these things are really subtle and really hard to figure out, but we just try our best. That's all we can really do. But a lot of these things are easily identifiable. So the first thing is make yourself familiar with these keys, make yourself comfortable using it, and that just takes practice. So we hope hopefully you guys are practicing that. The first question that any good ant key will ask you is how many nodes. Again, we talked about the nodes before. It's those bumps in the middle of their little waist. Okay, so my observation is that people that write these keys they make it a little too difficult sometimes. Okay, the guys that write these keys are real entomologists. They're really university folks, and they're wonderful people. But sometimes they speak a different brand of English than I do. So this key on the one node ants down here says abdominal pedicel consisting of one segment. Okay, well, what does that mean? That means one node. Okay, that means one node. This one over here says abdominal pedicel is consisting of two segments, and that's a two node ant key. Okay, so anyway, become familiar with the keys and the verbiage that they're using, the language that they're speaking, and okay. So we have one node ants and two node ants. This ant right here has one node. Okay. This ant has two. So that's where we start on these keys. Okay. Another thing that the ant keys will look at is their thorax. So we've got head, thorax, abdomen, right? Head, thorax, and gaster. Another thing they look at is the thorax and the profile. The ant keys will say it's a profile of the thorax. This one is uneven. Okay, see it got a little dip right there. This is uneven. Okay, this one up here is also uneven. Okay. So this one here, this carpenter ant has a rounded thorax. It's smoothly rounded right there. Okay. This field ant has a bumpy thorax. That's another characteristic of some ants. Okay. This ant has one node. This ant also has one node, kind of a big node right there. But you can also identify ants by their thorax shape, the profile of the thorax. All right. On one-noded ants that have one node, when you go through a key, one-node ants require closer examination. Okay, one identifying characteristic of one-noded ants is the presence of a small circular ring of hairs around the anal orifice. Okay, so with one-node ants, we have to go there to Keister Island. So you have to take that ant and look at its rear end and see if they have a ring of hair. They have a ring of hair around the subfamily Formicinidae. They have a ring of hair around there, and some do not. Okay, some ants have a stinger on their rear end. The stingers are, they're not always two-noded ants, but most of the time they are. And the ones we run across, the ones that have a stinger will probably be a two-node ants. But the one-node ants, one subfamily have a ring of hairs around the anal opening, and one subfamily does not. So that's something, again, with the microscope, the microscope's really helpful. One note about the microscopes is, let me back up, show you. One note about the microscopes is the problem with the microscopes for the phone is that it's really hard to use your hands to manipulate the sample. It's really hard to get in there with some tweezers and turn that ant over and look at some stuff you need to look at sometimes. With a regular dissecting microscope like these, it's more readily done. It's easier to do it that way, to turn that ant over, look them over. So antenna are another way to useful to identify ants. The first segment right here from the head to this point here is called a scape. Okay, these ants always have elbowed antennae. All worker ants have elbowed antennae. So if you're looking at, if it's an ant or a termite, if it's got elbowed antenna, it's an ant. And if it's got nodes, it's an ant. Okay. This, when you count antennal segments, IDing these ants, this does count as one segment. So we have 1, 2, 3. Some of these keys will ask you for antennal segments. If it's 12 segmented antenna or it's 10 segmented antenna, whatever, that scape will also count. Okay. So let's use the key to identify this ant right here. Okay. This ant looks like 2 nodes. Okay. Right there and right there. There's the nodes. We have 2 nodes. So we're going to use this 2-node ant key. Makes sense, right? Okay, so we got 2-noded ant. Now we're going to proceed down and we're going to look at these different options that we have here. Okay. Okay, the different options we have. This option here is, it says dorsal side of thorax. Dorsal means this top, like a dorsal fin on a fish. It means the top of that ant. Okay, dorsal side of thorax without distinctive spines. Okay, I'm going to look this ant over. It's thorax. Oh, there's a spine right there. Okay, so it's not that one. Dorsal side of thorax with 3 pairs of spines. 1, 2, 3. I only see 1 spine. Dorsal side of thorax with 1 pair of spines. This is 1 spine right here. The other, it says pair, so that means, so the other one's on the other side. We can't see it in this slide, but this ant has 1 pair of spines. Okay. All right. Now we proceed. We're right here on the key, and we're going to move down this way here, and we're going to look at this option here. It says pedicel attached to upper surface. Pedicel attached to upper surface of abdomen. Okay, upper surface of the gaster. They're talking about right here. The pedicel's attached, and the other option is pedicel is attached to the front of the gaster. This is the gaster, remember? Okay, and this pedicel is attached to the front. So we have this. We're here. Now we're going to proceed down the key to the next step, which is we look under the head right here. Okay. Underside of the head have a brush of long bristles. That would be a harvester ant if they had the bristles. these bristles look like a little beard. Okay, harvester ants are those ants that I don't know. I used to put firecrackers down the hole of harvester ants. It's the one that make those big round nests, and they're clear and they have a lot of rocks and stuff around there. They're very obvious nests. They're pretty good sized ants. However, this is not a harvester ant. The underside of this, no bristles on the underside of this guy's head right here. So here's where we are on the key, and we're going to move down another notch, move it down like this to the next step, which will be, says face and thorax without a series of ridges. We're going to look directly in this ant, face and thorax with a series of distinct ridges. And this ant has ridges all over it. Okay, so the key tells us this is a pavement ant. It meets all these criteria that we already talked about. So, so what happened? What you can do is you go to the job, customer calls, hey, I've got an ant problem. You know, come take care of it. You go look at it. You know, treat it. You know, all that. And you can come back, follow up in a couple of weeks with these folks and say, hey, you know, I did. When you follow up with them, you say, hey, we got a pavement ant here, and it makes your professionalism come through. Okay, we want to be pros, and we want to be good at what we do. And the more you ID ants and the more you do this, the more you walk through this key, the better you're going to be, the better you're going to be prepared to answer questions for folks and all that stuff. So it makes you look good when you come back with that specific identification of that ant. And it's important for control as well. So what do we do about control? Well, I probably wouldn't call these guys. Okay. But there's several ways to control. We're going to do our best to ID the ant. Okay. And we try to locate the nest if we can. One of the ways we can do that is, again, crumble up some food and see if you can determine which way they're hauling the food. You know, which way they're taking the food. That'll help you. Exclusion, meaning try your best to keep the ants out wherever you don't want them. You know, make sure your screens are on your house or in good repair. Door jams, you know, all that kind of stuff. Sanitation, leaf removal, removing limbs off homes. Those branches that are touching the house are a highway to ants. Reducing the moisture. We can also reduce reduction of honeydew by aphids and scale insects and stuff. And there's an interesting relationship between honeydew producing insects and ants. And sometimes ants they'll tend to aphids. You know, they'll tend to them. They'll clean them and they'll kind of baby them around, so they'll produce honeydew for them. It's a mutually beneficial thing for both the aphids and the ants. The ants will defend the aphids. So if we can reduce those insects, that's helpful in reducing your ant populations. Okay. Baiting is another way to control ants. Ants don't eat solid food. They hold food in they call it a crop. It's an organ specifically to kind of pre-digest food, and they hold it in their mouth long enough where it becomes a liquid. Hold it in a crop long enough where it becomes a liquid, and they share it with each other. It's a process called trophallaxis. This is really important when we talk about control, because ants share food. They're kind of the ultimate hippie insect. They share their home, they share their food, they share everything with each other. So they hold this food in the crop, it turns to liquid, and then they go back and share back and forth. They feed the larvae, they feed the queen, and once we bait and they share all that, it kills the whole colony. Okay, so baiting is an excellent way to get rid of ants. Perimeter treatments with non-repellent insecticides. Non-repellents are things like some active ingredients for non-repellents would be like fipronil, some stuff in Termidor, Taurus, and I don't want to get too specific with products specifically, but fipronil is a good active ingredient to use on ants. So is imidacloprid, by the way. You guys are spraying merit and mallet and all that stuff. That's an excellent non-repellent. What non-repellents will do is allow us to do is, again, ants are very social and they rub on each other, and they're always interacting with each other. So non-repellents allow them to get into that stuff without them even knowing it. Okay, they get into the insecticide, and when they start trophallaxis, sharing food, they start interacting with each other. They get that insecticide all over each other. Okay, so if it's repellent, like Tempo, Talstar, Suspend, all those things, those insecticides are labeled for ants, but they repel the other ants. Okay, so non-repellents are a better way to do ant jobs, in my opinion. Okay, and be sure and monitor and follow up. Once you do an ant job, it gives you another opportunity to interact with folks, and like I say, come back with an ant ID is an excellent way to build some relationship with that customer. Always read your label. Always read your label. Make sure your species of ant that you're trying to kill is on your label. This has acrobat and Argentine bighead and so forth and so on. Again, that goes back to reading the label, identifying the ant. A lot of times fire ants, carpenter ants and stuff will have a separate, sometimes they have separate chemicals. A different fire ant won't be on all chemicals. So be sure your ant is labeled on the label, okay? Then you go to the mixing instructions, and for this particular product, I'm going to be down here. Look at it, like perimeter pest. You're going to spray a foot up and a foot out on a home or a business or whatever. That'll tell you how to mix it. You can, in this case, we can mix a 0.06% solution or 0.03. So 0.03 is okay on the label for this product. So it'll tell you, you go to the mixing instructions on the label, it'll tell you how to mix that particular dilution. Okay. If you spray ants, obviously the ideal would be to spray the nest, so you get all of them at once. But if that's not possible, you do the best you can with your spray. The perimeter sprays are a good way to keep ants from becoming a problem inside anybody's home. So, okay, I will try my best to answer any questions you may have. Is everybody okay?
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Hi.
What's the story on leaf cutter ants? We got them a lot of them down here in South Texas.
Do you? Okay. Well, they'll use that. Again, they'll get that food and a lot of times they'll put it in the nest, and sometimes that stuff will just start molding. Okay. It'll start that particular variety. I don't have them. I'm in Oklahoma City, so I don't have those in my world too much up here. But a lot of times, they take those big chunks and they'll put them away, and that product will end up molding. They end up actually eating the mold. Okay. Again, the same. If you can find where that nest is, that's the best way to control any ant. So those are easy to follow. You can just follow that. You know, they're not going to haul food away from the nest. They always haul it to the nest. So if you can determine, you know, where they're coming from, that's the best way to do it.
You can find the nest, you just can't kill them.
Yeah. What are you using with them?
Well, the only thing that's labeled for it is Delta Guard.
Delta Guard. Okay. You're talking about the granular stuff?
Yeah, you put it down the hole and put water behind it.
Okay. Are you in the yard or landscape?
Well, in the yard and the field too.
Okay. I would I'd run an imidacloprid product. I'd soak that nest with an imidacloprid, merit, mallet, something like that. Drench it.
Okay.
Try that and see if that'll help you.
I was at the pest control at Heritage the other day, and they had a new one out called Ant X, and it's got a label on it for that.
Yes. Yeah. Antics. Yeah. That's a good product. See, all of them are, they're all, you know, they're all good products. You just got to make sure we can find them. That's the biggest thing, you know, finding them is the best thing with spray.
They're not hard to find. They have a trail.
Yeah.
It leads right to the nest. They're not even embarrassed about it.
Yeah. I'd try merit or mallet, one of those kind of products with imidacloprid, or you can try some, if you got some, Termidor's label for some kinds of ants. I'm not sure leaf cutters are on there or not, but we'd have to check the label. But does that help?
Not many things for leaf cutter ants. They're hard to kill.
Let me. What's your name? I'll do some research on it. I can call you back.
John Anderson.
John. Okay, John. You're not the singer, are you?
Nope. I wish I was.
Okay. All right. What? I'll find you. Rachel, would you have his email address? Can I reach him?
I'll have his email address, so I can send it over to you then.
Okay, Lindsay, thank you.
It's
John,
on file. It's on file with Heritage in San Antonio.
I'm sorry. What was that?
What's that?
I'm sorry.
It's on file with the Heritage place in San Antonio.
Okay, John. All right, I'll get with you. I'm writing it down right now, and I'll catch up with you this afternoon. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, sir. Anybody else have anything? Come on, you guys, wake up. Well, I wish you all a very nice weekend. If there's any other questions, let me revert back to my if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm going to put my information back up there, right there. My phone number's up there as well. So if you have any questions, please call me. Be glad to help you. I want to help you. And if I can do anything at all, please let us know, or let your local rep know. if you need any chemical or product or advice or whatever. Okay. So you guys have a good weekend. See you later. And I'll talk to you soon.